let's talk about this piece today. It's a little bit unfinished, but I wanted to use this opportunity to talk about fabric and fabric folds and how to basically flesh the rest of the piece out. I could also talk a little bit about proportions and maybe even try to get it to a finished look. And one thing that I've really been interested in doing is fleshing out the paintings that I paint over in Critique Hour, like fully flesh them out off screen, you know, and just post them somewhere. Just take the paint overs that I do and spend my time with them, hours and hours more, instead of the 1 hour that I get. Sophie? Shh. You know I'm teaching. Be quiet. So what I'm going to do is just do this. I'm going to just quickly render these, talk about the proportions, and then maybe in the future, and one of the ones that I did recently, the vampire one specifically, I really wanted to continue painting and kind of push it, see how far I can push it. And I was wondering if that might be fun to stream for you guys. What do you guys think about that? So the first thing that stands out is the size of his head. It's gigantic. So I'm just going to shrink the size of his head a little bit to match his body. So the hand is foreshortened. The hand is much closer to the camera than the head, but the arm and the head, the hand and the head, why is my brain doing this? The hand and the head are not really, they're not making much sense. So what I'm going to do is shrink the size of the head to match the perspective and increase the size of the hand. You made his head huge because he is a gnome. Okay, so the artist is here today. I see. So we're dealing with a little bit of a situation here. So usually when okay, so a gnome's okay. So the proportions that you have here, the way the head is shaped. All right, this changes things a little bit. The way the head is shaped is it's as if the head does not belong to this body. So what we want to do is like change the way the head looks so that the bone structure and the characterization is kind of, do you see what I'm saying? We're trying to match the proportions of the face to be that of a gnome, which is a little bit pushing the standard of what handsome male looks like, but as a gnome. So we want to contort his proportions, increase the size of his eyes, not give him a basic standard NPC male head proportion, because it just looks like the head is too big for the body. So what we want to do is round off the bone structure so that we're not in that template, that trope, and give him more gnome-like, elf-like facial features. If he is 3 feet tall, it still doesn't mean that his head should be a bobblehead. So you're working within bobblehead proportions at this point. So a gnome can still have proportionate head to body ratio, just be shorter, just be compressed, like be a little bit on the shorter side. So let's look at a gnome really quickly. Okay, so we look at a gnome. You wouldn't call this a bobblehead, right? You wouldn't say this is a bobblehead. You would say that it's compressed, but the proportions are a little bit, they're sized for each other. Also, the type of portrait that we're looking at, or the type of facial features. I've almost seen a man that has proportions like this. Do you know what I mean? Like, obviously not. This head is huge, but we still have childlike proportions. So child standing. Okay, so images. AI is trying to interpret child standing. So if we look at like the proportions of a kid, the head is pretty big in comparison to their body. And an adult standing, like an adult male standing, I should have looked that up too. The head is significantly smaller. So, all right. in comparison to the body. All right. See, so there's a lot of very rounded shape to the kid's head. And as you get older, your head stops growing, but your body keeps growing. Right? And so the head is much smaller. So what I was seeing in your piece is the bone structure and head of a male man. Male human. There I go again with the mailman. I swear to God, last class I was all about the mailman as well. A male human. Do you see that? Bone structure, jawline, brow bone, all of that stuff. So you took this head, enlarged it, and threw it on a child body, which doesn't make sense. This is what a gnome looks like. And if you were trying to draw a handsome gnome, Gnomes movie, I think they had a handsome gnome in there. You're basically just doing the same thing we had when we looked at animation from, let's say, a Bug's Life, or animation from, they were always going to increase the size of the head of the bug. Do you know what I mean? Animation from any of those Disney movies. What Disney movie would, I mean, I guess the dwarfs in Snow White, the dwarfs, might help you figure out how to adjust the head. But you see how his bone structure is flat and his head is short and wide. It's not long and bone structure-y and elf-like, like an adult male elf from Lord of the Rings. Do you see what I'm saying? Very, very rounded features. Okay, and then nearly every animation movie you've ever seen, you're going to see the head size much bigger. So this is technically gnome-like features for the girl who isn't a gnome. She's not the gnome. They are. But again, we go back to that oval, that flattened sphere, and the non, standard NPC. The thing is, I wouldn't say human because these are supposed to be human, right? But they have gnome-like features. So it's strictly this. We're exaggerating and caricaturizing what kids look like, and use them for kids' movies, and use them for fairy tales, and use them to represent the fae folk or little people. You know what I'm saying? And it's always, even if when you're trying to do a handsome one, which maybe this is what you were going for, you need the flattened features, the flattened body, the short, stout body, which could still be handsome and a love interest and heroic without it losing its gnome-like familiarity. So the reason why this feels off is because it really feels like you took an adult male head and just threw it on a body of a somebody else who's shorter than him. Not even a gnome yet. What's that there YouTube thumbnail? What YouTube thumbnail? My YouTube thumbnail? What about it? What about it? Sorry, I'm so confused. Do you guys see something inappropriate somewhere? There was a gnome butt. Oh, this one. Oh, okay. Let's take a moment and just appreciate the gnome thong. This one? It's from the gnome movie. Oh, the Sherlock gnomes. Okay, so what do we do? What do we do? Whoa, what do we do? I want to talk about fabric. So if it was supposed to be a male gnome, I showed you how you can go about adjusting that. But right now, I am going to adjust it to make sense for what I'm seeing in front of me, which is I'm just going to turn it into a human, okay? But I hope you understand what I'm saying. You need to go back to the drawing board when you're designing a gnome. We really need to see gnome first, and then character. So if you really have to have a gnome, that's what you're bringing in as a template first, and then asking whoever's you're designing this for, or if you're doing it for yourself. Okay, now I'm going to add in the characterization, this protagonist hair color, but you have to go design a gnome, a standard gnome template body, in the lab, go design what your style wants a gnome to look like, and then come back here and illustrate it. But you can't do it on the spot, and you can't take human proportions and just enlarge the head, because no, it's a little more formulaic than that, and a little bit more thought is needed in designing a gnome-like caricature is stuck in my head. The word caricature is stuck in my head from classes. Character. So I'm fixing his little turtleneck right here. And still the head feels very small, very large, sorry. So I'm just going to keep shrinking the size of the head and not make it feel so constricted. Okie dokie. So let me correct that. So let's talk about fabric folds. Like, how would I go about rendering these fabric folds? Fabric folds are super, super easy once you know how to paint a cylinder. So can anyone describe how to render a cylinder? What's like the most essential part about rendering a cylinder? What's like the most important core shadow? The most important thing to keep in mind? Does anyone want to take a guess? And I'm just asking questions just so I have time to fix the trees and not have to say anything. All right, so I'm fixing up the trees. And I'm cleaning up, and then I'm throwing in some more twigs over here, some more twigs over here. All right. Radial shading, beautiful. Yes. Thank you. You guys hit the nail on the head. Okay, so radial shading. The thing is with a cylinder is that it's very cube-like. You know, it's got like that long, very, very straight sort of response to the light. It's very, very uniform, very symmetrical. Doesn't ask for too much, but you have to create that straight shade with a radial technique. So I am going to basically render all the fabric in here to the best of my ability with the time I have, and talk about how like important this cylinder is. And when you guys know how to render cylinders, you really you've done half the battle. Like it really is the most important shape for illustrators to know. So I'm merging that down, and just to show you how big that head was. Okay, and those features were not gnome features. It wasn't gnome DNA. It was human DNA. Just looks very, very large head. So you got to go back and fix that gnome DNA, or else it's just not going to look right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick a color that I feel like will help illuminate all of this. So when you're trying to pick a dark, medium, and light for like any of these objects, what you do when you pick the highlighter is, yes, you're going to pick a lighter green for sure. So in a new layer, I'm just swatching, but you're going to mix it with the environment color. So this would be the light green of this scene. It's very bluish. Some artists really stylize, and they straight up pick the blue and use that blue directly on what they're painting. Okay, and so that works as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to use a soft brush to do it, but I am going to do a mix of all of these. So the environment color, which is like the bright of the environment. If you were out there in the environment, all of you guys have been transported into this forest, what light would be hitting you? How do I see you? Answer this question. How do my eyes, if I was transported with you, and I can see some of you, it's not fully dark, what's the light that's letting me see you? Anyone want to take a guess? I already answered it. I already answered it. So if you guys answer wrong, I swear to God. Moonlight. Excellent. The moonlight, yes. So that's the color that you pick. And that's how you decide what the highlight is. So if you were transported into a beach, you would pick the sunlight, which is a very pale white. That's the color you mix into the light version of your base tone. So you don't just go here and just pick, oh, I'm going to go right here. No, that's not how you do it. Yeah, that's not how you do it. The first thing you do is you travel toward just directly up. When it comes to fabric, not skin. Skin travels along an angle. So remember, don't confuse skin highlight, medium, and shadow with fabric highlight, medium, shadow, because fabric doesn't have a layer of blood under it. All right? So fabric, you go straight up. Just find a light version. Stay away from this because it's just way too saturated. This is like neon. Oops. Okay. And then you slide the color picker toward the general behavior of the light source. So it's a very cool blue moon. We're going to slide over toward blue and then slide over toward white. So this is the color picker version of what I just explained to you. I also just grabbed blue and just drew it right on top. But that's pretty much how I pick good colors for highlighting anything. And that's pretty much how you do it. Okay, so we're gonna go upward, go up this way, and this, in this particular environment, in this particular world, this is what their green is going to do. And so in a new layer, I'm going to radially start climbing up the hat, and I'm gonna let the hat kind of get wrinkled up. Okay, and I'm going to let my values climb up out of the shadow for that hat. And then instead of perfectly blending it out, since it's a very, you know, not the perfect, most smooth, silky fabric for a hat, I'm just gonna use my smudge brush and get it all messy. Sometimes I get my blocking brush and I'll erase away at my brush strokes just to create a texture. Okay, and that would be the negative, that would be the ambient light that's letting me see his hat. Obviously, the direct light is in his back. Behind him is where we would have the direct light that's happening on his body from the moon. But this is the shadow side. Some of the moonlight bounced around off the ground, off the sky, and found his character's hat and illuminated it for us. Okay, his character could be a little bit darker, but we can break some rules. There's also the bounce light, so I'm going to just directly pick this background color and use it on the side of the hat that's just facing the most shadow. And I'm going to place in some bounce light. Nothing really gets to sit for too long without getting bounce light on it on some level. I'm going to do a little bit on this side, deleting as I go. So I'm not letting it be too smooth because, again, it's supposed to be fabric. Sometimes I'll do the radial shading with a hard brush, with my just standard brush, and I'll just build up my blocky brushes the way you would with radial shades. And I'll do the bounce light with the blocking brush and all of that. So again, the main light responding to the ambient leftover light of the universal on his hat, and then some bounce light coming in from the side. And now the hat feels a little bit more three-dimensional. And then I'm just going to add in some breakage. Like, I don't want it to be perfectly smooth. So I'm just going to add in, like, I'm going to get this dark value and just create a cut in the folds of the hat. And then just create an extra little fold here. So the cylinder is such a big deal. It's such an important shape to like really understand, because everything you're going to draw has some cylindrical nature to it in an illustration. Sometimes things get uncylindered when they're in a study form, but when you're studying textures, you are going to run into cylinders more than the cube is there theoretically. Remember, the cube is there theoretically in that the cube is everything. Everything has the z-axis. Everything lives in a three-dimensional world. But the imprint of that textures, nature, or behavior, especially gestures, humans, animals, there's cylinders in everything. So So don't forget about your cylinders. There really are the king shape for illustrators. And so there's the hat. I mean, I need a good reference for what is required for a hat. Sometimes a hat will have some scuff marks here and there. So I'm just going to use like some of the lighter tone to create like a I don't know, a texture. And I'm just going to scratch my brush over the surface just to show maybe this hat is not the most smooth texture ever. And I'm going to give the hat rim like some thickness. So I'm going to make the rim of the hat a little bit darker. Just to show that it's got thickness in it and isn't necessarily getting that direct light. Because it's thick. Thick like that. That GIF. I forget what GIF that is. Just a character going like thick. Okay, I took the posing by building it in Magic Pose. Took the posing by building it in Magic Poser. The colors don't ask. Oh, I see. Well, the pose is good. The pose is good. So let's move on. Let's go down. So for this collar area, so we want to think about the mesh. So there is a cylinder here somewhere. So we are thinking about the way the fabric or the object, the shape that the fabric is sitting around or the way the fabric is folding. So we know that there's a dip here. There's highlight up here. And then there's everything down. So right under that, I am going to get that highlighter I picked for his outfit earlier. And on top, the top part of the collar gets that light block. Then under the collar, we have like a little shadow situation. And those are the most important blocks. Those are like the critical blocks of this area. And then I turn off my grid. And then I try to make sense of it. Maybe throw in another mini wrinkle just there. And just be creative with it. So you find the mesh. Can anyone explain to me what I just did with the mesh? Why was that important? Why was the mesh important? And I'm just blending away now. I'm zoomed out quite a bit. So finding where the top part of the guidelines, try again. And so this area is getting tucked behind his hair, so it's going to get a little bit darker. Planes. Excellent, Filippo. Yes, the planes. So I think his hair would be inside his collar. I also don't think the thumb would be in front of the index in this angle. Not sure where you got that from. But the hair would be inside the collar, right? Some of it anyway, because it's attached to his head. And then his what's it called? His turtleneck would like catch some of the hair, and some of the hair would be in front of the turtleneck. So you want to keep it a little bit messy. Yes, so the planes of the fabric, exactly. And so I'm just going to give this fabric a more clear fold. I'm going to clean up this edge back here. Make it fold inward. And then give it a nice darkened edge. Since the light is coming from the reflective ambience in front of him, so that means the side of any object, just like we did with the hat, is going to get darker. And then I'm just going to add that wrinkle of the way the collar wrinkles inward, bends away from the light. Never forget the thickness of the object. Okay. And then we're going to do the sleeves and the rest of the body. Actually, before I do that, I want to do the tunic first. Okay. So when we think about the tunic, we know that there's something casting a shadow on the tunic, which is the jacket. So I'm going to find the shadow of this tunic, and in order to do that, I color pick the base tone right here. This is where we're starting. And what's the general atmosphere of this environment? Well, it's very cool. Look at the background. It's pure blue. It shouldn't be pure blue. There should be some kind of other color for the moon, but that's okay. And I'm going to push it towards purple, and then I'm going to darken straight down. That's going to be the shadow color of the fabric. Maybe not this hard, you know, maybe not this dark. This is okay. And I'm going to try to get the shape of all of these out. Maybe the light isn't so sharp that it's causing sharp shadows. You know how like it's a really strong light that's going to cause that. And I'm going to use that color on darken mode. Yeah, some yellow in the moon wouldn't hurt, exactly. And I'm just going to cast the shadow of the jacket, which is really important. And it's not consistently dark all the way through. The shadow of the jacket gets darker the more under the jacket it gets. Makes sense, right? The more the jacket hides the object, the darker the space under the jacket. And then I'm going to blend out the cast shadow that I just created. I don't want it to be a sharp shadow. All right, so that's the most important thing right there, is making sure you have your cast shadows. And then I'm just going to lighten the shadow the further it moves away from underneath the jacket. And then getting a nice dark value to really bring in my contrast and darken the space directly underneath the jacket. You guys already know this stuff. This is pretty standard basic stuff, but sometimes the basics, we forget them. Even the pros forget the basics sometimes. It's nice to have a recap. All right, and then now we're going to do the inside of the jacket, which is not going to have any light on it. And so we're going to go into the base, we're going to darken it, and we're going to cool the shadow. Again, always remember why we're cooling, why we are cooling things down, because that's the general atmospheric value happening. And so the inside of the jacket is dark. It's very dark. It's like a cave. And it gets darker the more behind the character it gets. I'm just going to go full black. I'm going to find the middle ground color here, and I'm going to make it darker the more inside it gets. Okay, until I reach a point where I feel like, okay, this is dark enough. And then I just blend out the rest. And let it be messy. Let it be weird. Let it be not quite perfectly radiated towards the shadow. I'll do the tunic in a second. Now that I have that, I want to darken the scarf a little bit, just to show that it's behind the collar. It's all tucked away. This back sleeve can get darkened. The inside of sleeves can be pretty dark. It's a cave, and caves get darkened. So the inside of this sleeve can get really dark. That's what I usually do. I go for the darkest zones, areas that really do need pure shadow. Those are the areas that I'm going to darken right away. So I have a good idea of how much dark I get to use. Okay. And then I zoom out, and now we have this really obvious cylinder fold here. There's some kind of seam that's letting that collar fold inward, or maybe the jacket folded inward, but we have a very obvious presence of a cylinder. So I'm gonna darken, I'm gonna get it a little bit darker, because this is all looking away from the light. This is all kind of behind his body, sort of, not really, but just enough. And so I'm just darkening things a little bit. And then I'm going to pick that same color, that color that's affected by the moonlight, in a new layer. And I'm just going to radially build up this cylinder. Brushstroke 1, brushstroke 2. And that's enough of a build-up, I guess. And then I'm just going to delete away what I don't need. And then just like the highlight, we want to build up the shadow as well. So the shadow sits on the outside of every one of these folds. Just like in the hat. And that's all that fabric is. It's just a bunch of cylinders all over the place. Right here, there's another example of a radial cylinder for the sleeve. And that is given a really, really basic cylindrical shape, meaning that's got that core shadow under it. And then it's got that middle highlight, always pointing at the light. And then as the fabric reaches the edge of the canvas, it gets darker radially. Radially gets darker. Not the framing just for that fabric, just the fabric itself. Okay, and then now we can do these. So this is just a bunch of, it's just more cylinders. So this is how I do it. I showed you the theory with the soft brush, but this is how I do it for my paintings. I block it in. I block in the cylinder. It gives me a good idea of like what I'm supposed to do. So we have one cylinder here, another wrinkle there. We have another cylinder there. And then we have the general movement of highlight this way. We have kind of a shadow there. We have the back of the shoulder, some of the shadow of the lower arm, and then the front of the jacket may get a little bit of extra light. And then the back of the jacket, and then wherever the staff is casting a shadow against the jacket. So I block in my cylindrical values for the wrinkles. And then there is the recession shadow as all of the wrinkles bundle up and bunch up together. And then there's the shadow of the back of the jacket, or the back side, that slowly gets darker. And then I zoom out and, you know, I wonder, like, is it something I like? Do I want to add a couple more wrinkles here and there? So I want to break this wrinkle up and throw in another one somewhere there, and maybe break this wrinkle up. So now that I have them, all I got to do is decide which side I'm blending. Where is the inside of the wrinkle? One of these edges has to be preserved. I can't blend both sides of my block, because then I'm just back to square one. We're looking at mashed potatoes or pea soup. So we have one side of the fabric fold that needs blending. You decide which side. You decide how that fabric is folding. And so I know that these fabric folds are folding this way. I'll show you. Right? So drawing the mesh is really helpful. And at one point or another, let's imagine a car driving over these folds. At one point or another, the car disappears, comes back up the hill. You know, have you ever seen a car drive over a hillside? The car disappears from the camera, right? Because it's going down the hill. That means an edge happened. And so that means I can't blend this block. Do you guys see what I'm saying? So that's like the way to make fabric folds look realistic. But eventually they even out. Eventually they soften out. So fabric folds aren't sharp all the way through. They even out. And so this is all I do when I do fabric folds. This is how I go about it. I just make sure that I remember where the car is disappearing. If the car is disappearing, which hill is hiding the car as it disappears? All right, there was the shadow of the arm. So that's an important shadow to keep. I'm just going to make sure we have that shadow. And then I'm going to throw in a couple more of those wrinkles, always with the shadow first, never the highlight first. Well, obviously the midtone is in first. And I'm just continuing this fabric folds here. I'm just trying to follow what the artist drew. I would look up how this particular fabric of this type of jacket folds. They don't really get very foldy. They can billow a little bit, but because the fabric may be heavy and very insulated, it might not end up being so wrinkly like silk. It has to be a very thin fabric to create lots and lots of folds, right? And so I'm just cleaning up all these blocks I made for all these fabric folds. And wherever the fabric gets really, really, it's not just a hill that's hiding anymore. It's more like cave-like. Then I'm going to bring in more shadow. And that shadow is brought in radially. But I have to remember, there is an edge here I have to preserve, or else the car doesn't disappear. And I'm just going to merge this down. All right, so here I can blend all of this. That's not an edge. That's not where a car is disappearing. But a car is disappearing somewhere over here. Where the artist threw that line there. All right, and I've got to make sure that that cylinder still feels very cylindrical. And then blending, keeping the edge, blending here. Okay, and then eventually you do this enough, you'll be done with the shadows. You can start thinking about all the highlights. So right around here, this surface may be casting some bounce light on this part of the fabric. So I'm going to throw some bounce light there. Should have gotten rid of the artist's lines. And I'm just going to get my soft brush. Oopsie. And try to carry this wrinkle up. Sometimes we will need to get the highlighter of the environment and use that to, actually before I do that, I'm going to bring the entire fabric of the body down. Just because it's too bright for this low in the canvas. I'm going to just bring that whole section down. Okay, just completely darken it. Darken the lower part of the tunic. Okay, we shouldn't be seeing all that. And then now that I did that, I'm going to use this highlighter radially to bring out some of these folds. So let me zoom in for you guys. So brush stroke number 1, 2, 3. We're trying to build up the fold to give the fold more volume. So the brush strokes are piling up, but they're piling up with see-through layers. And eventually we end up with these types of folds. Well, this is a lot of volume for a couple folds, so you might not want that, but this is just for demonstration. But you might want a fabric that's a little less shiny. You might want fabric that's a little bit more heavy looking. That decreases the amount of folds and decreases the amount of highlight. Right? But again, I'm just trying to follow the fabric fold the artist picked. These are not the types of folds I would pick. I would try to find one that represents that fabric. And then this collar here will cast a shadow. So I'm just going to create that shadow, that overlap shadow. Right there. And then the top of the sleeve is going to catch some light. And the same thing with the rest of the sleeve. I always zoom out to make better decisions because zooming out really changes the way you understand the contrast of your painting and what impact that brushstroke you're adding is doing. So again, I have to pick which wrinkle I want to keep, which edge I want to keep of the wrinkle. So I want to keep this one, but get rid of that one. You can only keep one, but you have to get rid of one. All right, and then I come in with the brighter value and try to build up the wrinkle. Always making sure I know where the wrinkle is coming from. Find the wrinkle origin always, or else your wrinkles don't make sense. So all this is wrinkling. Is it wrinkling against the staff? You know, so that is something that I have to think about when applying new folds if I'm going to keep rendering this section. Because if it's the staff that's holding up the jacket, then that would explain why all of the wrinkles are kind of focused on the staff. And then we have some collapsed folds and wrinkles here. I'm just going to give the jacket a little bit more of a believable bend down here, so it just doesn't look like too many wrinkles for this type of jacket. And then right here where the wrinkles really fold in, I'm going to put in a lot of shadow. And then delete away. Okay, so you see how that fabric really nicely pushed up against the staff? And we have to think about which fabric is in front of which other fabric, and you think about the layers, but really the mesh line will reveal everything to you. The mesh will reveal it all. Let me see if I can get a nice sharp edge there. Might be able to make things make sense. So every wrinkle, every fold is a cylinder. Write that back to me. Write that down. Every fold is a cylinder. And if you know how to render cylinders, you can render anything. You really can. So right here, there's an overlap edge. The bottom of the sleeve is casting a shadow and overlapping the jacket. So we're going to get a nice sharp edge there. But it's not going to be a line. It's going to take the shape of the sleeve as it casts that shadow down. So that sleeve is going to start thin. That shadow of the sleeve is going to start thin and end thick. And it's going to thick. The word thick is the theme of today. And it's going to get blended. Okay. And just over here, I'm going to throw in the rest of that sleeve. And at the very end, I'm going to zoom all the way out with my soft brush and do like those big brush strokes, the ones that control everything, the ones that manage temperature and manage exposure and manage contrast. Those brush strokes are really important because they remind me, okay, this isn't only about the fabric. The fabric can decrease in opacity the lower you go in the canvas. In contrast, not opacity, because it's not that important. It's just the edge of the canvas. I need to make sure that's dark. So that's the same concept everywhere else. Really, the only thing that matters is this character's face in the scene. And everything else is a supporting actor, sort of. Do you know what I mean? So I'm going to try to get the edge of his collar to be a little bit more obvious. And the edge of his sleeve and the trees and all of that to just get cleaned up a little bit. I'm going to throw in some kind of detail for where the jacket buttons might go. And it's going to be very mild. I'm going to use the same value pretty much all the way down. And I'm going to put like a light line inside it to show that there's like a secondary seam catching some light or something. And it doesn't have to be visible all the way through. You can like make that line disappear. It doesn't need to be super visible. It just needs to indicate its general presence. Just to show that there is like a some kind of surface detail for the sewing involved in this jacket. As an artist, you have to think about stuff you didn't even know you were going to think about, like stitches, you know, stitching, sewing, all of that. I'm going to continue this highlight on where the collar, not the collar, this hem, I guess it's called, the hemline, I don't know. And I'm just going to add those little shines on wherever the fold sticks out and catches some light. So wherever there's a fold, the hemline might catch a little bit more light than anywhere around. Okay, and then merge that down. And then now we're going to do the tunic. Tunic is so simple because we have a belt. So this means that we just have just a bunch of cylinders standing beside each other. So again, with my blocking brush, I'm blocking in the wrinkle. So I pick one side of the wrinkle to get a shadow. One side, just like the cylinder. The reason I pick the left side is because the light is coming in from the right. And again, 1/2. And then, oh, I guess this one is kind of underneath. So we'll throw that one like that. And then don't forget the outside edge of the fabric also gets an edge of shadow, almost like a line, but not really. And we have one long edge shadow. The edge shadow of an object, and especially object that's facing a light source that's hitting it head on, is really important for making that object actually look like it's receding into the background. Okay, so now we have a bunch of blocks here. They're all good looking. We're going to blend only one side of the block. You can't blend both. I'm a doofus today. You can't blend both. You can only blend one edge of this brushstroke. Again, everybody, take a look. One brushstroke, right? You can't blend both. You can only blend one side. You can only blend one side. And that's how you make the wrinkles look like wrinkles. And then I'm just going to expand it upward and blend them together. Can't blend, can't blend both. So I'm blending one side of the brushstroke. Take a look. It happens really quickly, which is why I say take a look. One side of the brushstroke, one side. Obviously, this side is going to be this side because we can't blend the edge of the dress against the background. That would be crazy. It's breaking the laws of physics, right? So I get my blending brushes. Blending brush is on my website. It's part of the blending set. Okay, and I'm just showing the edge of the belt, where that edge of the belt goes. And this is exactly the same way I rendered fabric when I painted my green witch. I don't know if you guys saw that one. I posted it on my Instagram. I didn't really make a big deal out of it. I just posted it somewhere. But a lot of people asked me, Istebrak, please do a tutorial on how to blend, how to render fabric. And this is it right here. This is exactly how I did it. I just block in. I know where my brush stroke is going to be because I know where the cylinder is. And that's it. And I'm just going to darken the upper half of his torso because it's kind of receding into his neck, right? And so that right here gets darker as we climb up into his collarbone. So we can't just make it bright all the way up. Right? We darken it because it's starting to disappear. So really, only part of his tunic that catches the light is just like this really, really narrow part right along the middle. So you can start putting in your brush strokes for the highlights. And again, I just picked the sky color, or you can just pick that blue color, or you can go here and slide up into the green blue right here, or down into the green blue, whatever matches the sky. You can't go into purple, right? And then just go from there. So it's really up to you how you want to do it. That's how you find the best highlighter tone for your environments. And I'm just going to throw in, like, in a new layer, I'm just going to throw in like a couple of brush strokes that build up. And I'm going to blend them out, zoom out, and erase away until I feel like I have just enough build up on that part of his dress. You know, I don't need to worry too much about the tunic since I just need to show a generalization of the fabric. And right here, I'm not happy with this cylinder, so I might just throw in a really strong extra core shadow here for this cylinder. That way it doesn't look so uniform, and then blend away. Sometimes wrinkles will create a pocket in between them. And then I'm just going to darken on my way up. And this collar here, I'm not quite happy with it. So I'm going to make the tail of the collar like brighter. And the rest of the collar around the middle and the sides a little bit darker. Just because the tail is flat and most likely will catch light compared to anything else. Okay, and then just want to make sense of what they're trying to do with the turtleneck scarf thing and the collar. And making sure the collar has a nice strong shadow underneath it. Remember, cast shadows are really, really great for creating instant realism. They're like a realism trick. You throw a cast shadow, suddenly the human brain, even if it's so under-rendered, will just be like, wow, that's real. That's realism right there. Even though it's like, you know, just a cast shadow. I'm going to throw in the silhouette of the other collar since we really need it. But I'm going to make it face away. And then we want to render the, so wait a second. I really wish I had another like wrinkle or something here for this fabric. I would do some other pattern. So before I move any further, I want to establish how dark this character is. So I did all of this without silhouetting him a little bit more. So I'm going to get this environment color. I'm going to make it a nice clear blue. And then I'm going to darken. And I'm just dropping this over the entire character. And this is also going to account for the color change required for the character. Meaning that this is also a color filter as well as a shadow filter. So then I'm just going to delete everything that is not in that silhouette. So the background. So those colors that I rendered, I knew I was not going to keep those colors. They were going to get filtered because they were too bright for this environment anyway. But I still could work within them because I knew that the environment change could have been done later. So you can just render it the way you want with general colors, just generalized environment colors. You don't have to have the perfect color picked out. You can adjust later with filters, like I just did. The filter of the blue of the environment and the dark of the silhouette. Okay, so now everything is sitting in the same zone. Everything is sitting in the same world. Everything feels like it is in the same room, so to speak. Deselect. Okay, so you see this this filter I added, this darkness, and if you duplicate it, you know, and then just adjust as you go, adjust to a level you like. Right outside of it, right outside, we need to have some brightness. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to illuminate the character behind using dodge tool or something. You can use you can just paint it in. Because I need this character to stand out. And there's this like really pretty moon behind. And so I want to create some of that moonlight. I'm not going to keep all of this intensity, just enough that the silhouette feels complete. And I'm going to delete away at what should not be that bright, which is the character. Okay, so now we really get the character to stand out. They're as dark as they need to be, considering it's nighttime. Everything is nice and filtered through the same color temperature. The colors on his character don't feel like they're pulled out of a sunlit room or sunlit environment. They actually feel like colors pulled out of a dark forest, deep dark forest that is lit by a single bright moon. That's the most important thing about illustrating. Okay, guys, that's rule number one. Make sure all of your characters look like they are in the same room. All the objects, all the elements, all the props have the same exact sky around them and air around them. They're in the same environment. Okay, so these are the environmental changes. This is without any environmental change. Do you see how the colors don't match? And this is with the environmental change. Without, with. Without, with. It's not sticking out. You know, the green doesn't, it's not, the green you had before was the type of green that we would see in like a daylight, but it's overcast, you know? So you have a lot of clouds in the air. And these are the environmental changes that are required for this scene. You can take away a little bit of them. And then now that everything is, balanced, you can get your dodge tool and like highlight some areas of the character that you feel like could really benefit from a highlight or two. And then you can render his face. Remember, rendering his face is all about knowing which light source you're responding to. And in this case, you're responding to the light source of the camera, that ambient light that we used on all the other objects. So I'm going to just darken his belt and darken the far side of his tunic. We don't need to see all the elements, every wrinkle, everything like that does not need to be represented. Some things are just caved in a shadow, and they're not that important. So this part of the tunic, it can stay bright, but really we don't miss it when it's darkened a little bit. And that's your prerogative as the artist to make those kinds of decisions. And then in the end, you made so many of these decisions, the painting is done. So the next step would be to cast the shadow of the hat. Even though it is an indirect light source, it will have a cast shadow, but the cast shadow will be blurred. But it's very necessary to have one. It's very important. And then in this environment, you must have the rim light. But the rim light will help you. Yes, it's a must. It's not supposed to be an outline, but the rim light will help you discern between what is a flat surface and what is a surface that can carry light through it. So for instance, his hair can carry a lot of that rim light in with it. Some of the more fuzzy fabric will also carry some light and have an even stronger rim light because little hairs catch the light. And so I'm finding all these zones that can get the rim light. So the fabric of his jacket may be a little woolly, and so it may catch a little light in some areas. This part of the jacket, this collar, this part of the, I'm really shrinking my brush because I'm being so careful with what actually gets that rim light. Not everything gets rim light. This part of the hat may get some rim light. I should probably do this in a new layer so I can smudge it. So I'm pure white right now. I'm pure white, and I'm placing in these super strategic, very, very, very careful lines for the rim light that are just supposed to be just enough that it feels like the surface of this fabric has caught some of that light and is revealing the object exactly how we would see it had we been in this scene. So again, pure white, and I'm just seeing how much rim light I can get away with. On the dark and light side, it doesn't matter. There's rim light. Rim light is the leftover of the rotated side. We're on the dark side of the moon, basically, right? We're on the dark side of the eclipsed moon. So that means that if this was a moon moving in front of the sun, we would be on the shadow side. We'd see the eclipse. Same exact concept here. Little rim light just traveling under the hat just slightly. Be very careful with it. You don't want to outline the character. You don't want to outline anything. This part of the staff will get some, not just rim light, it'll get some highlight from the moon, but let's just throw in a little extra rim light there. The space behind his body, so just there, we'll get some rim light, a little bit on the sleeve. Actually, the sleeve did not get erased. Yeah, the rim light adds almost pretty much everything else. But remember, we couldn't have the rim light if we didn't have those believable cylindrical shadows. So don't be fooled by the idea that, oh, all I need to do is add rim light and my characters look cool. That's the thing. That's the dangerous part about the final decorative additions in your illustration. They trick you into thinking that's all that it really took. And I've seen a lot of students run into that. But yes, the rim light adds a ton, but it's so little. It's supported mainly by those really, really careful, those really present, cylinders that we used everywhere else. The actual rendering, the base, the balancing of the values. We couldn't get rim light that made sense if we had been too bright. We actually had to filter. Remember the filter change I made, right? The rim light wouldn't be able to shine this much and stand out if it wasn't for us darkening the character. Oops. So I'm just cleaning up here. And then I'm just going to add the string of the bow. And it's going to catch a little bit of that rim light. But it's not going to be fully visible. Oops. Oops. God damn you, Photoshop. Okay. And I'm just going to delete like sporadically at the string. I don't want the string to feel like it's just fully present in the painting, because the string in a painting is very dangerous. It splits your painting in half. You don't want it to just live there. You want to kind of cut it up a little bit, just so it's just there doing its job. And then of course there's rim light on his face, so the hair of the face catches some light. There's the edge of the face, which I really got to clean up, so give me a minute. Against the tree line, which is very tricky. So the rim light of his face, we would definitely have the lashes, but be careful because we want to do this zoomed out. Doing it zoomed in is very, very dangerous, because what's going to happen is you're gonna damage the painting. Always add rim light zoomed in. I know it's a very thin brush. You're tempted to zoom in. Did I say zoomed in? Always add rim light zoomed out. I'm so sorry. I'm trying to paint and talk. Zoom out when you're doing rim light. Okay, we're done. We're done the lesson. So a little bit, starting with the lash, since it's the hairiest part of the face, or not, second to the eyebrow anyway, and it sticks out the most, catching a lot of light. And then the hair of the cheeks, the hair of the jawline, especially a male character, is going to catch a lot of that light. So you have a lot of things left to render. You've got the fingers, which are cylinders. You've got the face, which is, I've taught the face 1,000 times. Y'all don't need another portrait lesson from me. Come on. But in order to find the values of the face, you just got to make sure when you are darkening, you are staying within the realm of red. So you want to basically be careful, keep things cool, but without losing the red presence. So like this would be a good value to start off, where your shadows might end up. Just over here. It's a dark scene. So I would say this is like a good value right here. Oops. Oh, shoot. That's okay. This is like a good value for the skin, just swatching beside it. And then now we have like a nice reddish color for the skin. Make sure the ears are pretty red. The nose is pretty red. We are in shadow, so we're just laying down these general temperatures. And then we're going to get the full dark of this environment, which is a very purpley dark value. And we're going to make sure all of our sockets are dark. Any core shadows are dark. Oopsie, that's too dark. Cylinders are dark of the mouth and the nose. The other and the lowest part of the face, most turned away from the light. And we're really only just getting light on the parts of his face that are catching that ambience. So like the surfaces that are flat. And that would be a great base tone to get started. You would want to pick a skin tone value that is filtered through the purple a little bit, but you can do that with layering swatches until it feels like, okay, I'm not quite grayscale, but I have not left the rules of my environment. So we've got that value there. We've got the upper, we've got the nose bridge, got the rest of the eye, got the lower part here that might be catching some bounce light. Okay, and then you just keep going back and forth until you've swatched enough that it makes sense. His jawline feels a little bit off. I feel like this, you need to spend a little bit more time thinking about this, like this turtleneck situation. And how high it's going, if the hair is even in front of it, if the hair is tucked inside this turtleneck type thing. Do you see what I'm saying? So like if the hair is bringing it, the thing is bringing them all in. And then I would let some hair fall into his face area a little bit, just because that jaw looks really weird without it. It's kind of just overly present. So I would let some hair fall in front of the jaw just to help you. So fabric is all about the cylinder, knowing the direction of the light source, making sure that you are reseating your values appropriately. You have some proportion issues in the elbow. I feel like the elbow wouldn't be tucked in. You have to have bounce light. You have to make sure your environment is nice and dark. And you don't blend away every edge when it comes to rendering them. You blend away some of the edges, not all of them. And I'm just trying to find this this detail here. Do you guys have any questions at all? I know fabric can be a bit tricky, and feels like one lesson isn't quite enough to represent what happens with fabric. But I hope this was a clear tutorial and to demystify it a little bit, because I know a lot of you see a completed illustration and you're like, oh my God, where do I start? There's so many elements in an illustration. Like, how do you manage all of that? And you really can, as long as you remember that all the colors need to be leveled in the world of the illustration. You can pick all of the colors and render everything you need in grayscale, and then add colors and temperatures as you need. You don't have to paint everything at once. You can paint different sections. And if you do fabric studies and form studies, you will prepare yourself for the responsibilities of an illustration. But as long as you remember that, you know, if you take it one task at a time, eventually you run out of tasks and the painting is done. The bandana is covering his jawline. Okay. For his hands, fingers, I have trouble only putting the ambient occlusion between each finger and still making it look like fingers. The ambient occlusion is tricky, yeah, but you have to remember radial shading. I can see how it's tricky. What you got to do is just, let's just say we're using black. You lower the opacity and you start piling up your black value. Right? And then you have this like haze. Then you delete away at the two surfaces, creating the ambient occlusion, so that you're left with this like comet's tail coming out of every finger. And rinse and repeat. You do that as many times as you need to create that radial situation. And so I'm just radially right on top of the line where the two fingers meet, and then deleting a little bit from the top. Yeah, delete away the two surfaces, because it's a cavity really. But this ambient occlusion is not more important than the core shadows of the cylinder of each finger. So this shadow and this shadow and this shadow are way more important than the ambient occlusion. These are really, really important shadows that you have to have. Okay. So I would also look up a good reference for the hand, just so that finger here, this finger looks a little off. And then I can show you the before and after. Not that the after and the before are linked, you know, I'm adding to the painting, not really adjusting something you already did. But before, you can see how the head kind of just didn't really read. And the values you picked were not values from this environment. You picked values from a completely different environment. But I understand they were just the first base tone values you added. They weren't necessarily anything final. But by the time you add, in all fairness, by the time you add these tones, you should have factored in this background value. Okay, but you saw how we can do that later. No problem. And now if you wanted to saturate, let's say you missed the saturation of his shirt or his jacket or his hat, you can saturate. And if you saturate, you're saturating in the environment. So it's still going to look right, because the saturation brush can only do what's available to it. It's not going to invent colors. And this is about hue and temperature, not so much about saturation. You can get all your saturation back. Okay? So I hope this was helpful. Thank you for being here, Catfish Jimmy. I really like when the artist is here. It feels like I'm teaching someone directly. It's always fun. So this was a tutorial, more less than a critique, I guess. If you want your work critiqued, though, I do critique work. All you got to do is go to istebrak.com and click on the subreddit icon right here. That'll take you to my subreddit where you can submit your work for critique. There is currently a community challenge, and I'm already seeing the first couple submissions, which is really, really cool. Cannot wait until everyone submits theirs. If you guys feel like you need more time, please let me know through Discord. I have a public Discord group that you can join right here. This is the free Discord. This is the paid Discord on Patreon. This is the free Discord right here. And you can just @me, @Istebrak, on this Discord. I'll get the message, and let me know if you guys want an extension for the community challenge. The community challenge winners win everything: my masterclass, my portraits, not my portraits, my portrait masterclass, my other portrait stylized masterclass, Portrait Studio, which is a software for building references, my brushes, and 2 one-on-one private tutoring sessions with me. You're bumped right up to the top of the list. You don't have to wait for a booking in order to come in. You're just booked in the soonest available slot. And yeah, it's lots of stuff. And I critique your work directly, help you build a curriculum for yourself. And for anyone who posts here, it's not about who posted the best drawing. It's not about who posted the most skillful book cover. It's about the one who put in the effort, who showed that they really are trying to build their portfolio and just need a little bit of help. And I have a masterclass. If you guys are interested, I do have a masterclass, and it's everything that you need to know about portraits. And that's it. Thank you all for watching today. I really appreciate you guys hopping into the live stream. I'm so tired. Another week of Critique Hour is done. I hope to continue doing these indefinitely without taking any intense breaks of any kind. I am off next week. Next week Thursday. Next week Thursday. Yes. So the 1st of May, I will be taking that off. But next week, it's all depending on what I decide. Next week was supposed to be the deadline for the community challenge. So this might be just critique hours next week if not enough people post. But let's see what people do. If they need an extension, I'll offer it. All right, guys. I'll see you guys next time. Bye.